Are you considering getting into real estate, or maybe you just have questions? This episode is for you. Courtney and I sit down with Seena Ghetmiri, who left his safe, secure W-2 full-time career in dentistry to pursue real estate full-time. We talk all things from the economy, current trends, Airbnb. Is passive income actually passive? With that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We're your hosts, Michael and Courtney Weaver. We have a very, very special guest today, a friend of ours, Mr. Seena Ghetmiri. Seena, how are you?
I'm good. Weaver, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, brother, man. We are pumped to talk all things real estate today. For those that don't know, Seena left an amazing, well, I don't know about amazing, but W-2, paying job, guaranteed money, bet on himself, went all in on real estate. Seena, thank you.
Yeah. I'm so pumped because you went from dentistry and now you're full into real estate. And I have so many questions because you've launched all different types of rental property. So let's get into it.
I appreciate that warm welcome, and what you guys have done is incredible. You guys, both of you stepping out on your own and building the Weaver Sales Academy and everything. So I'm lucky to know you guys and be inspired by you as well.
Well, thanks, brother. No, it's and the reason why we wanted to have you on is because so many, us included, but we work with so many insurance professionals that are looking to diversify their portfolios. Investments in real estate happens to be one of the things that a lot of business owners, including ourselves, have began to, or maybe we've had questions. I know I've personally had questions for like 10 years. So, do you want to start off with questions? Do you want me to roll into it?
Well, I think for me, I'm always looking at this. How do I not have to work forever? And I think that really leads into the real estate question. So you have a bunch of different kinds of properties. So talk to us a little bit about why you got interested, how long you've been doing it, and kind of maybe some things that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take you back a little bit. So as you mentioned, I used to be a dentist, and what happened was I got out of school. I did the thing I thought I was supposed to do. I went to dental school, spent 10 years of schooling between undergrad and grad school. And I got to that point, and after the first couple of years, I got into the first year, I was like, wow, I'm in way over my head. I'm new at this. I kind of suck. But I kind of started to justify, well, that's because I'm new. It'll get easier. And then about halfway into my second year working, COVID hits. And I go from 5 days a week to 2 days a week of work. And so does my pay. And at this point, we had no other investments. Luckily, my wife, Keisha, has her own business and does well. It's online, so she didn't get affected by the COVID restrictions from going into physical work. So we were able to pay our bills and still live our life. But if I was the sole income earner, man, that would have been bad. So that was the first time where I first started like, okay, I need to figure out something else because I got to take control, because I thought this safe, stable career of being a dentist, like I could never be affected. I'd always have a paycheck. I'd always have income. And just like overnight, it went away. And I was still working 2 days a week, so it wasn't like totally away, but that's when I first started thinking about it. And then a year after that, I decided to step away from dentistry, and that's a whole nother kind of set of stories that we don't have to get into, or we can, but I decided to go into real estate because I did see the power of real estate, and I honestly think it's the best asset class that I've seen holistically, and I was really excited about it and wanted to get into it. So that was a big reason for me really starting to get into it, is I needed to take control of our financial future because I did the thing I thought it was going to be safe, and it turned out it's not as safe as I thought it would be.
Not as safe as betting on yourself?
Yeah. Correct. I thought I mean, taking control for yourself and investing in real estate, while it's new and there's a lot of factors that go into it, you do have more control of like charting your own path and your finances, and you can build wealth with something that lasts a long time and can weather some storms and stuff like that.
So had you thought about real estate prior to, like, when you were in dentistry? And I know that there's a lot there because you are Persian, and so you have these, like, taking care of your family, and this is your certain paths that you can take. But had you thought about real estate before, or was this just something that COVID kind of fast forwarded for you?
I did think about it, but I always told myself a story like I was too busy or I couldn't do it because of X, Y, and Z, which looking back now are just kind of excuses to not stretch myself to do it. If I had to go back, I wish I would have started earlier when I had a W-2 income, because it's a lot easier to scale and get loans from the bank and stuff like that. Plus the earlier you start, the better it is with real estate because it just goes up over the long term. So I'd always been interested, but COVID and me rethinking dentistry really expedited that.
So before we get into real estate, I would like to just talk a little bit about that real fast. What was ultimately because you just said, like, hey, if I was still working, if I still had my W-2 income, it may make it a little bit easier to get some loans, to have a little bit of money coming in to then invest that money. So what was ultimately the decision? Like, what happened that you're like, screw it, like, I'm done with this, I'm going all in on real estate?
Yeah. I'm more of like an all or nothing guy. So what happened is after those first 2 years of being out and working in the real world, I got experience. And I'm like, okay, I want to step into a different type of clinic, because I was in a clinic that was it was just fast paced. It was seeing a lot of patients. It kind of burns you out. And my wife and I moved to Austin, Texas, and I found this awesome clinic to work at. It was 4 days a week, regular hours, no weekends, no nights, really good pay, really good clean clinic, brand new equipment. Everything was perfect. And for the first 9 months, I loved it. And then the honeymoon phase kind of wore off. And I was sitting there one day, I remember it was just one of those days where, like, I was just exhausted. And I'm like, is this what I'm going to be doing for the next 30 years? Like, I can't do that. My wife is an entrepreneur. She loves her job. I see her just like enjoying how much she likes doing what she's doing. And while I liked a lot of parts of dentistry, there was a lot of it that I just didn't think it was for me. Like, I never got comfortable. I never found my rhythm. And mix that with I always felt I wanted to build something on my own that was bigger than me. And I wouldn't do that within the dentistry realm, because I didn't want to own clinics that has its own set of challenges. And I just wasn't on that path. So I was just sitting there. I was like, I got to make a change. And my wife, Keisha, was on a business trip. She comes home that night and we sit down and have dinner. And I'm like, I think I want to leave. I think I want to take a break from dentistry for 6 months and try this real estate thing. And at this point, I didn't know that much about real estate. I dabbled enough that I knew what was possible, but I had no idea of what to do. But I was like, I'm just going to try it. And that's where the all or nothing kind of jump in comes. And I don't know if that's the best approach for everyone. And it was definitely had its own challenges for me. But I decided to just go all in and figure it out. And I told myself, I'll go back after 6 months if I can't figure this out. But as soon as I left, it was off to the races. So there's no looking back.
Yeah, I love that story. I think there's something to be said about going all in, but more importantly, you chose joy and happiness over a job that probably wasn't, seems like it wasn't making you happy anymore. And there's a lot to be said about that.
And you live with the ultimate hype woman. I mean, like, you come home and you're like, let's do it. She's the let's fucking go.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
I can't get that excited about a root canal. I mean, I try, but like, oh man, it's tough. No, it is a great career, and I'm not trying to. It's great for some people. I realized it wasn't my thing, and you don't know that. And this goes to, like, you might have a lot of listeners that have done something for a long time, or they did the thing they thought they were supposed to do. And what I've noticed since leaving and talking to people that have similar feelings that I have within dentistry, but also other professions, is there's a little bit of guilt that comes up because you spent so long and you spend a lot of money. Like, a lot of people that went to grad school, it's pricey. And they feel this guilt that they have to stay in that situation. And I just want you guys to hear me. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, there's ways out. Everyone is in a unique circumstance, so you got to figure out what's best for your situation. But I want to be an example of someone that can change his mind from something that seems so like linear. Like all my friends, when I left, were like, what are you doing? Like, like you spent so long getting to that point, and shouldn't you love it? Like, don't you love it? You make all this money. I'm like, the money doesn't matter. Like, it just came down to the happiness piece, like you were talking about, Michael. What do you want to spend your time doing? Because, you don't know how long you have here. So you got to go after what you want to be doing.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
I want to talk about the difficulty. So you make this jump, and I think this is, at least for me, when I look at real estate, I don't know a lot about it. And so it scares me a little bit because I don't know when you're looking at short term or Airbnb. So I would love to hear your perspective. Like when you were starting to learn about this, what did you figure out very quickly, like do's and don'ts?
Yeah. So I'll first go like on a personal level that I went from a very linear path my whole life. Take this test, go to this school, take this exam, this license. I mean, it was set. Like I knew exactly what I needed to do for the last 10 years. Like which applications, which school, which courses I need to take. And then I leave to get into this entrepreneurship and like get into real estate. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, like there's so many avenues you can go down to, and I floundered. Like I had a tough time figuring out my direction because I'd been so used to knowing my path and within dentistry, or I guess in a broader term, like within a structured system, like a corporate job or a W-2 job, and then going out on your own. You're responsible for figuring out what your day looks like. Like, how do you make progress? And that was my biggest struggle of figuring out what direction to go. What was I supposed to do for the day, and figuring out what avenue of real estate I wanted to go in. So that was probably my biggest struggle because I felt like I was dropped in an ocean. I'm a good swimmer and I can swim and find the destination and find what way I want to go. I just had no idea what way to go. And ultimately, I found my path, and that came just from taking action of trying things, which we'll get into the different types of real estate. But Courtney, like, I had the same feelings. Like, it's intimidating because it's such a big space. But what's helped me, I had a friend tell me that there's almost like every type of real estate's been done for hundreds of years. Like it's nothing new. And I'm a little more risk adverse, and I don't think real estate's risky at all. There are situations you can get yourself in that cannot be favorable, but over the long term, it's pretty hard to mess up real estate if you have a long enough time horizon. And I just kept that in mind. And a friend told me, he's like, there's nothing that can happen to a house that can't be fixed. Like, a foundation breaks. Okay, you fix it. A plumbing breaks. You fix it. Like, nothing's happened that hasn't happened before. So you're going to figure it out. It's just you learning and getting that confidence from doing it. So it is an intimidating field because it's so big, but really what it comes down to is just a bunch of little steps, and you just got to do the next step. So first one's finding what type of real estate you want to buy. And then you find, how do you evaluate if it's a good deal? And then you find, how do you purchase it? And then you find, how do you manage? It's just all these little things that you do over time that will help gain that confidence so that you're not that intimidation factor goes down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how did you decide you wanted to do short-term, and I think you do have one long-term rental, but you're primarily focusing on short-term Airbnb, correct?
Yeah, for now.
So how did you decide you wanted to go that route versus the long-term rental side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question because I was actually pretty anti Airbnb. I'll start off. We purchased our first long-term rental in Phoenix through our mutual friend, Steve. I think you guys did as well. And it's a great investment in like 30 years. Mm-hmm. But right now it's like, it doesn't make that much. It makes like $100 a month. Like that doesn't change your life. But in 30 years, we'll be thankful because you get the pay down from the tenants, you get tax benefits. So it is a good investment. And then we went to this meetup here in Denver, and our friend Chantel hosted it. It was she has a brokerage that They specialize in Airbnbs. And we went to this meetup, and I was talking to other Airbnb owners, and I was just like blown away by how much, like what numbers they're doing. Like if long-term's doing like $100 a month, the equivalent as a short-term rental is doing like $2,000 a month. And these aren't even in like downtown Denver. These are in like 20, 30 minutes outside the city. And I was just like, this is unbelievable that these houses that are the same house as the long-term that we bought are doing this. So that was my first like, okay, I got to look into this more. And then speaking with my wife, Keisha, she was there too. We talked about like, I think we could really do this because we can leverage, like she has a big community. We can get an Airbnb that's like meant for big groups, and we can do like a whole like social play on it. We can leverage your community. I can manage it and do this kind of together in a sense of I'll run the real estate side of things. You can run the social, the more just like the leveraging of the community's drive to it. And ever since that meetup, it was just, okay, we're all in on Airbnb right now because I just think that people need a space. I think people will travel all the time. I think they need to they want to get together. I think if COVID taught us anything is that the in-person is just really valuable time to spend together. So I crushed those doubts that I had about it being a fad. I thought it was definitely a fad, but I met too many people that were doing it, and these houses weren't like mega mansions. They were just like houses, and they were booking and they were making money. So I'm like, let's try it out. And as soon as we started getting into the design and the creation space, it's just really fun. It's a lot more fun than like a long-term rental because you're actually designing a space for people to get to enjoy time together. And we loved it, that so much so that we finished our first one, and now we're under contract for a second one. And it's all about just making sure you run your numbers at a conservative occupancy to make sure you're not getting yourself into any situation, because there could be a slowdown in Airbnb. So you just got to make sure that you're running at the right numbers.
Yeah. So I've got two questions. So the first question is conservative numbers. What would that look like? Like, what's a good baseline when running numbers from a conservative standpoint? Go ahead, and I can ask the second question after that.
Yeah, so there's a website out there called AirDNA. It's essentially the Zillow for Airbnbs. What you can do is search your area. What it does is it pulls data from existing Airbnbs. You can see what revenue they did last year, what occupancy rate they had. You can even search cities, like the average occupancy rate, the average daily rate that all the Airbnbs in that area are getting. In Denver, it's about 72% is like the average occupancy rate. So 72% of the nights are booked. And then what I did is I go in and find similar properties. So ours sleeps 12. I go find, okay, the 12-person ones are doing about this every night on average. I ran the numbers at 50% occupancy. So if things slow down and travel drops by 20% and we go down to 50, am I happy with those numbers that come in? And that's getting the average rate. And we targeted to be an above average property, but at average rate, and the numbers came out and said yes. So we moved forward with that. So that's like a basic high level overview of what you can do to evaluate what city you're looking in.
Yeah.
But I would run it lower than whatever AirDNA says.
Nope, that's fantastic. Okay, so my next question is because this is the first thing that comes to my mind when you're talking Airbnb, how much freaking work goes into it? And if I don't want to be the one that does the work, because I don't, how much of the pie?
Is it because of your skill set?
I'm not the most mechanical person. All right, let's not talk about that.
Sorry, I'm roasting you.
Shaman, come on, let's go.
Sorry.
But
I can't even change a light fixture. So.
I bet you're going to learn though, maybe, but or maybe not. The management company. So I know how much the management company takes on the long term. It's not really that much. From an Airbnb standpoint, are the fees higher? Like, what does that look like? And can you be totally hands off would be my question.
Yeah, I'm glad you really brought this up because this is my pet peeve. there's a lot of info out there about, usually on TikTok, saying like, oh, real estate's passive. There's really no type of passive real estate unless you're investing in someone else's fund. Even if you have a long-term manager on your long-term rentals, or a property manager on your long-term rentals, it's more passive, but you're dealing, like, you still have to deal with them and like deal with issues that come up. Airbnb is the opposite of passive, absolute other end opposite. The amount of work that goes into it, if you want to be an above average operator, if you want to be at the top tier, top 25%, you have to be hands-on. I think a lot of people are in for an awakening this next year, as if there is a slowdown in Airbnb, it's only going to be the top properties that will be getting the listings or getting the bookings. And you need to make sure your systems are good, your property's clean, it's up to date, it's top tier, because people will still travel. They're just going to pick the nicer ones. You can be hands off, like you asked. You can hire a property manager, but they take on average 20 to 25%, which is double a long-term rental. And what I've noticed is that cuts a big piece of the pie out that I didn't want to give up. So I self-manage. There's enough systems out there. There's enough, there's so much like technology out there. You can automate a ton of stuff. You can do messaging that's automated. You can have door locks that are electronic, so you don't have to go to the property to let people in. You can, there's a lot of things that you can make it easier, but it's never really passive. The upside though is the amount of money you can make from that active work. I don't think anything beats it on a cash on cash return in the real estate space.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm actually hunting for an Airbnb right now to stay at. And so I would like to know, if somebody's getting into Airbnb, what are some things that they can do to like set themselves apart? I know we've talked about numbers, but I want to know, like, okay, you've made the choice. All right, I'm getting into Airbnb. And Airbnb does take a cut too, correct?
They take 3% off the host side. It's not much. Yeah.
Okay. So how are you, because I know Peach House is completely different than anything else I've ever seen. So how are you setting yourself apart, making sure you're getting to like the top listing? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah. When we decided to do it, I told Keisha, I was like, I want to do it. I want to do it right. I want to make sure that it's designed properly. Something that I'd want to stay in. So when we're like, to set yourself apart, first thing I would do is go search Airbnb like you're looking as a guest in the area that you want to stay in, or the area you want to buy in. Pretend you're going to be a guest, and then go look at the listings. Just see what's out there and see the quality of finishes. When we looked, I saw a lot of like grandma's furniture and like no design, and it just wasn't thoughtful. I'm like, okay, I think there's room for us to make a splash in this area. So we decided to hire a designer. Like, I have no design skills at all. So we offloaded that to a designer, and we gave her our inspiration and the type of quality of finishes we wanted. So that's a huge thing. I don't think most people hire designers. That's an easy way to stand out. Second thing is the quality of the furniture. I would say go nicer than you think, because it's getting a lot of wear and tear, and you don't want to be replacing beds and couches and chairs and stuff all the time. You know, what is it? Pay once, cry once kind of thing. Just buy the nicer stuff. And I think that Airbnb is a picture platform. You can write whatever you want in your description, but guests are picking off pictures. Their attention span is so small when it comes to browsing Airbnbs. Your first 5 pictures have to be like, I have to stay there. They don't care about the listing description and all the stuff you say. That'll matter later when they book, but they're looking at those first 5 pictures, or they're scrolling on, like they're going on to the next one. So how do you get them to stop? How do you get them to, oh, this is a different one, I have to stay here? With that, you also get to demand a higher daily rate, which we did. We're probably 25% above the average daily rate in our area. So those are 2 like really easy things to stand out. And I think good operators that do that will see a lot of success in 2023.
I asked that question, and thank you for answering that, because I think a big question when you go to do this is how much does it cost? And I think you answered a lot of that saying the upfront cost, if you're hiring a designer and doing the furniture might be more expensive. So what would you say is like, and I guess that might depend on what kind of property, but is the cost, was it more or less than you thought it would be? Let's go there.
It came out, so I'll caveat is we met a lot of friends here in Denver that are Airbnb owners. So we were pretty aware of what they spent on their Airbnb to make it to the quality level that we wanted. So we had a little bit of knowledge going into it of what it would look like. But to be honest with you, I'll just give you the numbers. It costed us almost $60,000 to furnish Peach House. I mean, that's beds and couches and outdoor table and hot tub and everything. But our mindset was, I want to do it right the first time and really demand that higher rate. And we're getting bookings out in August right now. I mean, none of my other friends in the area have August bookings. We're already halfway full because people are like, I have to stay here. And that's because the pictures do blow people away, and the quality of finishes do matter in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love what you guys did. You really niched down.
Yeah.
And obviously riches are in the niches. So I think that you guys are going to benefit greatly for that. So the other day you said, hey, if I would have known this 8 years ago, our life would be significantly different. So I wanted, and I didn't go into it that day because I knew we had an episode coming up, and I'm like, I want to dive into it. Like, what are you?
Friend chat.
Yeah. So what do you wish you knew 8 years ago that you know now that for all of us listening, we could be like, shoot, we need to get on this ASAP?
Yeah. I when it comes to, I'll break it up into two parts. I wish I would have thought about investing in general earlier in my career, because I thought that I could just work my way to being rich. I never really thought, I was like, oh, I'm a dentist, I'll be fine. And then like the whole story came along. I'm like, oh wait, that's not true. I need to be investing. Whether it doesn't have to be real estate. If you're like, you like hearing about real estate, but you don't want to do it, maybe it's, I don't know, stocks or options or whatever you want to do to be investing, go for it. Second thing is with real estate, the sooner you're buying a property, the sooner a tenant's paying down the mortgage, the sooner you're getting appreciation. And one thing I want to touch on, especially right now, because if you're not well versed in the real estate, if you're not like I'm reading stuff about it all day about mortgage rates and supply and demand and home sales and stuff, and kind of tracking that in our area. But if you have a W-2 job, you're an insurance agent, you're probably not following it that closely. The next year will be rocky, for sure. For real estate, you have to zoom out and look at it on like a 10, 15 year timeline. Too many people are worried about year one returns. Do not worry about year one returns. That's not where you make most of your money, especially on long-term rentals. So that property in Phoenix right now, we've had it for 9 months. It cash flows $100. Well, next year, the rent's probably going to go up $100, $150, who knows? So then it's $250. And then imagine that over the next 5 to 7 years, we'll get that thing cash flowing more. But in those 5 to 7 years, our tenants paid down 20% of the property. So now we have equity in that. So I caution people that are too worried about what if the market crashes. It might. It might go down. It depends on your area. But you got to really look at it over 10 to 15 years. I don't know the stats, but I think historically, it's pretty hard for real estate to not go up over a 15-year timeline. So yeah, that's one thing. And then just the mindset of investing is the other thing. I just wish I would have been in that zone earlier.
No, I dig that. And that's, you hit on two things, and I actually want to dive into this a little bit when you say rocky. All right, I'm interested. But the one thing there you're hitting on that, I know Steve had a great conversation with us when we got our property in Phoenix as well, was, look, does cash flow really matter in your situation with what you like, do you need the cash flow right now, or is this more of a long-term play? And I think that that may be something that everyone, yeah, sure, more cash is great, but at the end of the day, it's just like investing in the market. You don't invest in the stock market unless you're a day trader, which 90% of them lose money. You invest in the market for the next 30 or 40 years for long-term results. It's the same thing, and that's why we went the long-term route. But Rocky, when you say Rocky, and obviously I also like to research this, and I have been disconnected for the last like month from data, statistics, all that good stuff, because we took a little hiatus from away. But what's Seena projecting over the next year?
Yeah, the hard thing is real estate is on a local level. Like, it's hard to give a national hypothesis of what's going to happen, because a lot of it's on supply and demand. So a lot of the markets that went up 20, 30% over the last 2 years will probably normalize. I mean, they'll probably do a drawback of 10%. But if you look at that 3 years ago, it's still up 10%, which is, I mean, that's a great return on your money there. So it's hard for me to give like a blanket answer. I think some markets will see a dip, but I just don't think there's going to be enough inventory. I think what you have, the problem is the rates were so low for 2 years. Like, I think like 60% of people have a under 3% mortgage or something crazy. And
2.25, baby, let's go.
Jeez. Oh my, I would kill for that. Like, that's a whole nother like story. I would buy that off you. Absolutely. They're not going to move. They're calling it the lock-in effect. So homes are like, people are emotional about their home, and they move on average every 7 to 8 years is the statistic. However, when you have a 2.25 mortgage, you're making a lateral move to pay more. You're not going to get a better house. And I think too many people are going to be like, well, I'm going to just stay. Like, I'm not going to increase my mortgage payment to have the same bedroom and bathroom number, or and just pay more every month, even though maybe it's the same price, but their mortgage payment's going to be significantly higher. So I just don't think there's enough inventory coming. I know in pockets that won't be the case, and in some pockets it is the case. But I think in the major metro areas, I don't see that. I don't see a big crash coming. I think it will correct, and I think there'll be opportunities if you've been trying to get in the game. But that's mostly from having less competition than there is having more houses available. Because we just bought one, or we're under contract. It was on the market for 90 days. They had no other offers. A year ago, when we were moving to Denver, we were offering on places, and we got outbid $150,000, all cash, with multiple offers driving up the price. Now, I mean, you have the opportunity to go in, and every house you look at, throw in an offer. Who cares? Throw in a lowball offer. They have no other offers right now, because the emotional buyers, the primary home buyers, are just staying put because they probably have a mortgage so low. And then people are just seeing all this stuff online, like, oh, everything's going to crash, so they want to wait. My other pet peeve is people that are like, I'm going to wait for the prices to come down to buy. And then the prices come down, and like, I'm going to wait for the mortgage rates to come down to buy. I'm like, well, that's not how it works. Like, you got to pick one or the other. Like, as soon as mortgage rates go down, the price is going to go back up. So do you want to lock in your basis low? And we're taking I mean, we're not getting a great mortgage rate on this place, but we're getting it $150,000 under ask. So I'll take that all day and then just refinance it in the future. Plus, there's no competition. So it's not that we're like taking advantage of a seller or anything. We're just saying, hey, these are our rates and this is what we can pay. Here's the offer. And they took it. Like, so it's your chance to get in if you've been wanting to get into investing. There's no greater time, because you're not competing with 4 other people for the same house. So that's what I think. No one knows. So there'll be a lot of people out there that say they know what's going to happen. No one actually knows. But it just evaluate your situation, make sure you're cautious and you run your numbers conservatively, and you have some reserves in your account in case there's some vacancy, and but there's no better time. I think than to get in right now. I think it just the prices are down and locking that basis low and you don't have to compete with a bunch of other offers.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I do have one more numbers question, and I know that numbers are typically Michael's game, but I'm going to throw it out here. What percentage, again, you said 8 years ago, I wish I had my mindset geared toward investing. What percentage of your paycheck should you be setting aside, or would you recommend to set aside, regardless of if it is, the market or real estate? For you, what are you kind of budgeting your guys' salary towards real estate and investing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not a financial advisor or anything, but from what I've seen and heard and kind of follow by, I think 20% is good. I think that's a solid number that you're not stretching yourself too thin of investing too much, but you're not also using all your additional money for other things that aren't investing. So I think 20% is good. I know a lot of people have like employee match on their 401k, and I think that's a great option. I think you should definitely do that. I'm not saying to go all in real estate, but I think having real estate in your portfolio is a must because I think it's too powerful, and especially as a W-2 owner or W-2 employee, there's a lot of tax benefits you can take advantage of. But yeah, that's what I would say.
I love that. I always like to check because
20% is the golden rule.
Yeah.
I mean,
what do you guys think? What have you heard?
Yeah, I mean that's what I recommend. Like when I was helping folks with financial planning, 20% minimum, especially our age group. That's what you should be diversifying. I think that's where people always get a little hung up. We can easily do 20% into the market. We can easily do 20% into out of that 20%, 10% market, whatever, 10%, 3% crypto, 10% whatever. Whereas with real estate, I think it gets a little tricky even for us personally. We're like, okay, well, we'll just save money. But then we're like, oh, we'll just time for our longest time. I'm like, oh, we'll try to time the market. That's insane. You can't time the market just like you can't time the stock market. And so that's why we made a deal. And what I would encourage anyone, like if you want real estate in your portfolio, think about just if you purchased one property a year for the next 20 years, that's 20 properties. Like I think sometimes, oh, I want a real estate portfolio. And it's so big that you never get started. And it's like, what if you just start? Or what about one property every 2 years for the next? That's 10 properties that in retirement will probably pay you at least $1,000 to $2,000 a month. Like that's fantastic. I
mean, I know we both have the mutual friend Steve, and that's how he thinks about it too. And when he explained it to me, I think of it as like little piggy banks that you're setting up yourself up for. Like, let's say even you buy like a $300,000 home in Phoenix or in somewhere in the Midwest where they're a little bit cheaper. Well, if you do 10 of those over the next 20 years, that's $3 million that you have. Well, plus appreciation. Who knows what they'll be worth in 30 years. And these are just little piggy banks that the mortgages are paid off, and then you could just put renters in, and each one's paying $1,000. Like, well, there you go. There's your retirement. Like, you just have to be able to hold out long enough to get to that point. Is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I love that we're having this conversation. That's exactly why we wanted to have you on, because you're a freaking expert. But when I think of it, because obviously I was always a big stock market guy, and I think that there can be a time and a place for stock market. But when I think about our personal situation going forward, to be able to own a real asset that pays you in retirement, that has tax benefits, and is something that I can pass on to kids and grandkids from a legacy standpoint, it just it matches our philosophy so I appreciate you coming on. This has been super helpful. I do want to ask you though. All right. I want to ask you just real fast. What are you looking for out of your insurance professionals that you're working with?
That's a good question.
Hey, this is the Insurance Buzz, man. Like,
I don't think I've ever been asked that. I've worked more with insurance professionals this last year than I've ever have in my life. I like responsiveness, how quick they can get back to me. I like having them as my resource, not an assistant, not getting kind of passed off to an email thread or something. I like to just get on the phone and handle whatever the issue is, or because we have to get, insurance on the properties done quickly during escrow and stuff like that. And I think just the attentiveness to details and the responsiveness.
That's great.
That was so good.
Communication.
Yeah.
Seena, I love this. You said something in the very beginning that you wanted to own something on your own that was bigger than you. And I am so excited to watch you continue to build this as the mogul that you are. I'm waiting for the
Not quite there. I'm in the process.
I'm waiting for the tat. It's coming.
Yeah.
All right. So you have a podcast. I want to hear a little bit about your podcast so those that are listening can follow you and continue to learn more about the real estate space.
Yeah. So the podcast is called Ghet.Investing. .podcast is the Instagram handle. And the whole reason behind it is, and I kind of was in my head about if I wanted to start right away because I'm newer to this space and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't giving like bad advice or anything, or I didn't feel qualified yet. But then I came to a conclusion that I need to share this because part of why I'm doing it is to show, like, I wish I would have been doing this earlier and open up the possibilities and show people what the possibilities are. And the podcast is a great way for that because I can bring on guests that have done it and that are farther along to show their stories, because that's what I needed when I decided to get into it. And we had Steve as our mentor showing us, hey, look, if you buy one property a year for the next 20 years, like, this is what can happen. And I had no idea. I just didn't know enough. So that's a big reason behind it is I want to show people what the possibilities are so they can make a choice on what type of real estate they want to invest in and hopefully inspire them to make a change and take action on that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it's so cool because you're going to bring on different co-hosts that have different specialties. So you'll have Airbnb, long-term. Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm so excited for all your episodes.
I actually personally love like talking to you because it's fun watching and hearing from someone that's just getting started and somebody that just wants to get started myself. Sometimes when you talk to folks that have been in it for 10, 15, 20 years, they don't remember what it's like. Yeah. Year one, year two, the first 6 months, what that second property purchase was like. And so I just appreciate you being transparent and open about it. And so podcast, fantastic. So Ghet.Investing, right?
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes too. So everyone can.
And then if somebody wanted to follow you or connect with you on socials, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can follow the podcast at Ghet.Investing.podcast, or my personal is Seena.Ghetmiri. You can just link all that in the show notes.
Perfect. Yeah. All right, brother.
Seena, thank you so much. This was
Thanks
so
for
much
having
fun.
me. You guys are awesome. I'm glad I could provide some value, hopefully. And let me know if you guys have any questions on anything.
So much value.
So much, man. You're inspiring. We're gonna be buying some properties this year.
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna be picking your brain. But as always, man, thank you so much for those listening. Thank you so much for your time. As always, time is the most valuable and important asset that we all have. We appreciate you spending time with us today. If you have any questions, comments about what you heard today, shoot us a text, 816-727-7610. Other than that, go out and make it great, my friends.